Welcome back to the Better Everyday podcast, where we're unlocking our best self, one episode at a time. My name is Grace Garcia, and this is my husband, David Garcia.
Hi.
I just want to say happy birthday to the Better Everyday podcast. A year ago on March 16th, so we are filming this a couple days early, but we always post on Mondays. So by the time this will go live, it would already have been 1 year that our first episode was aired. And so happy birthday to the Better Everyday podcast. It is officially 1 year old. And so I think that is the toddler stage, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
The bratty stage.
Sure.
Oh, man. We're refilming the intro for technical difficulties. And just my husband.
It's so amazing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like so excited to talk about marriage. And I think maybe that's why then it's like, oh, you're so excited to talk about marriage, huh? Talk about it now. And just, you annoyed me.
It's a test. You need to pass it. I believe in you.
So we're going to talk about marriage. And I think with anything, it's a roller coaster. Thank goodness. Thank God I love rides. But this summer we're going to be 9 years married.
Yep.
And so I feel like we're out of the newlywed stage. I think some people probably might still call this newlywed. I personally don't think so. I say like 3 to 5 years is a newlywed.
Being 9 years married and still calling yourself newlywed is like the people that show up to youth and they're like 35 years old.
But I've heard people say like, oh, that you live in the newlywed. And I'm like, when are we going to get out of this
they're
stage?
talking about.
Okay, so we're clearly not in the newlywed, but I still feel like 8-9 years, we're still not in the, wow, you're how many years? Like we're somewhere in the between. We're in the
What's
between.
that number? Like 15?
I think so.
Like 15 and up, huh?
I can't wait until I say like 10 years. 11, 12, 13, 14, 20 years. I'm going to be young. 41 years old. But the point is to say we have a couple years on our belt. And you guys know we're raising 2 kids. Our youngest is about to be 4 years old. And I think when you are raising littles, that's where your marriage, you're spread thin. And your marriage really has to see, like, what is it made out of? Because that's where you truly have to become a team. I think so, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, all right, what are you made out of? Go into the field, go, like, solve problems that don't involve, like, both of you. And so I do think you have to be way more intentional about being a unit, being a partner. And in the mundane of changing diapers, breastfeeding, co-sleeping, soccer practice, school projects, like in all of those things, still find it in your heart, in your energy levels to put your spouse first, which is so tough to do because I think every season that's going to look different, but how to still be a friend. Remember why you liked them in the first place, why you fell in love, and just like awaken that love, like make sure that it's still going. And we've said this time and time again, and we'll probably continue to say it time and time again, but if you are not growing, you're dying. And so if you're not thinking about your marriage, I think it could easily take a backseat in the back burner, how they say it. I think I used 2 sayings in that saying. Mm-hmm. It could take a backseat or it could be in the back burner.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you're like, wait, who is this person? Or he's my roommate. What did I see in him? I don't even like him anymore. You're just doing life and you don't really realize it, but you've grown apart, or so they call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I want this to talk about. And I mean, I think we've had seasons a little bit of both. And so just our perspective, again, take it how you want it, knowing that we've been almost 9 years married. I like rounding up because feels like a lot. Mm-hmm. But how do you think we're now? Right now.
How are we? How?
Okay, not like right this second because I was just annoyed at you like 5 minutes ago. But our marriage, do you think we're friends? Do you think we like each other? We can stand each other without the kids being present?
Yeah, I think so. Since we did couples therapy a couple years ago, I think that's what helped me a lot with, I guess, kind of rekindling our love. And because I grew up, feeling like I was alone most of the time and nobody would have my back, it took a while to like be able to actually trust you.
Yeah.
And I think when we did couples therapy, the communication skills helped us reach another level of understanding between us two. And that level of understanding brought trust for me, that I can actually trust her. Like I can actually be myself. I can actually tell her everything. And, like we're one team,
Yeah.
And so from that point forward, like I feel like I've loved being around you. We just recently took a Vegas trip, and I feel like at least once a week I'm like, remember Vegas?
That wasn't recently.
That was like 3 months ago.
Oh. Feels like a long time ago.
You try to take a vacation every single month. No, it was like 3 months ago. And
Dang.
yeah, I feel like at least once a week I'm like, remember Vegas trip? Because I had so much fun.
Yeah.
And that was supposed to be a boys trip. And it ended up like crumbling, and you're just like, why don't me and you go? And I'm like, bet, let's go. And there was no like dread in me, like, oh, it was supposed to be with the boys and I have to go with my wife.
And that surprised me because I think you hear it in like movies, or maybe it's like a cliche of the wife kind of being this luggage or like ruins things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, are you sure? Like, are you sure? But I, like, you were not only saying it because I feel like sometimes you just say it like, no, I'm sure, but it looks like it. And even again, how you said 3 months later, you're bringing it up, and I'm like, dang, like he really enjoyed it. I mean, I enjoyed it too, but I was just shocked because how you said it was a boys trip. You were so excited for the boys, like cigars and just like boy time, poker. And I was like, but you can't play poker. Like I can't play poker with you.
Yeah.
Or I'm not, I can, I guess. I'm just not going to.
Yeah, no, you're not going to lose my money. No, but I think we match really well. Like in regards to poker, I usually wake up really early, and I'll go play poker while you love sleeping in.
I love sleeping in.
And if I stay in that room, I'm gonna bug you, so I might as well leave, go play poker, and then I just happily play poker, usually with the old timers at that time, and just wait for your text, babe. I'm up, ready to eat. Let's go. And I'm like, all right, cool. I get out of the and usually by that time, like I usually wake up like around 6, go to the poker tables around that time. And then, like you're up like 9:30, maybe 10. So that gives me a solid 4 hours. Like I'm good. Like,
yeah, by the time I get ready,
I scratched my itch and, I'm ready to go. And we usually have plans, and usually they're like really awesome plans.
Yeah.
And so I look forward to, like, we both love food. We love new experiences. We love to have fun. Like there's not much that we don't do together. And yeah, so anyways, the point of that story is that, I had a lot of fun with you. I love spending time with you. I love when we go on our date nights and we go to a new restaurant and we have good conversation, and just the conversation back, and the car conversations are always good. So yeah, I mean, if you ask me personally, like, how do I feel like my marriage is right now? I think it's probably the best that it's ever been. And the cliche thing obviously is it's not where we want it to be, but honestly, that I can trust you and that I could see you as my best friend.
yeah.
That means the world to me. So yeah.
Which is interesting because I think if you were to ask someone that, or like a man or a woman, I guess, of how are you with your husband, I don't think it, like for them, it's not of like, oh, can I trust them? And then that's why things are not going well, or I don't trust them. So it's kind of halting our marriage, or I do trust them and that's why it's good. I think you pinpoint it that was stopping you from freely being yourself and from freely enjoying my presence. But I think people don't really make that connection.
Yeah, and just I guess to clarify the trust part, um, some people might hear that and might be like, oh, like, did you think that she was gonna cheat on you at every like corner or whatever? And my thing was not like that part, although we did go through something like that. But like my thing was like, can I trust anybody to have my back, really? And like with having my back, it's like if you've grown up feeling alone and you've ever experienced what I've experienced, you know what it feels like to just like you're not constantly under pressure. Because being constantly under pressure means like you gotta act like not you to be able to survive in the world that you're living in. Where when you finally find somebody that you can trust to be yourself, that really has your back, that cares about your heart, has that pure selfless love, it's just like you can like decompress and just let go and be like, oh my God, like this is rest. This is beautiful because I can finally just rest. I don't have to be under pressure. I don't have to like be somebody I'm not. Like I can be who I am. I can trust you with my heart, with my thoughts, my dreams, my desires, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
and I know that you'll care about it. You'll love me. And in moments where I need somebody to have my back, I know that you're going to be there, whereas, I grew up not feeling like that. And so that's what I mean when I mean like the trust.
Yeah. And you would hope, right? And when we first got married that I guess you hope that I can trust her. Like I hope that she loves me unconditionally. I hope I can be myself. But the reality is, unless maybe you've known them for such a long time or whatever it may be, that when you get married, that's when you develop that trust. When you go through those tough times, we're like, okay, it's kind of like that test. All right, I can trust her. And this happened. Okay, I can trust her more. And this happened. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yeah. Everything that you go through with your partner, like, is going to, kind of show their cards and show your cards as well. But I think what's important as well is being able to communicate in a healthy way. Because our thing at the beginning, like, I didn't feel like I could trust you very much. And again, trust in the sense of like, you're not going to really have my back. Like our beginning fights were like so like immature, like looking back at it now, but it, like a lot of it had to do with like, will you have my back when I want to do something versus when your family wants to do something? Like, will anybody, care about what I want, and they were childish, but like, because I didn't know how to communicate, like, hey, like this is how I've grown up, or, this is what I'm feeling. I didn't know how to be vulnerable, or maybe I didn't want to, like it was pride. Like I'm not going to tell. So it came out in anger and like, we would just fight and you'd probably be like, yo, what the heck is wrong with this dude? Like he it's almost like I'm like a cat being backed up in a corner, like just always like ready with the claws out, ready to like just start swiping at anything. And I'm sure you were like, what the heck? Like, what's up with this dude? And because I didn't know how to be vulnerable or anything, like, so that's why going into couples therapy, that helped me so much that I could actually communicate these things that I was feeling. And I was like, oh, like I can do this. I can communicate this. I can say these things and she'll actually care.
So you would say that's probably one of the biggest tips that you have for people listening, if they're like, how to keep the marriage alive or whatever, right? Would be to make sure you have that trust, so that let's say if the marriage loses its spark or flame, you can voice, hey, and that that they hear you, or not even just for that sake, but just so that when you have deep relationships, which helps with keeping the marriage alive, again, that they're not gonna take it out, use it behind your back, like when you're fighting, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Like nobody wants that. Nobody wants to be vulnerable, and then all of a sudden, and we did that. We did that at the beginning. We used to say things, and all of a sudden, like we get in a fight, and we're all locked and loaded. Like, remember everything that you said to me like a week ago? It's coming back at you in an ugly fashion. So yeah, trust is a big thing. Healthy communication is a big thing, but kind of rewinding just a tad bit, and you talked about the flame going out. Now I want to ask you, since this is your topic, because it sounds like, we're going to kind of center around, how to keep the flame alive, how to keep, the friendship alive, how to keep, that feeling of
a marriage going in a nice, steady pace.
So here's a question for you. What do you think causes the flame to go out? For that feeling of like, oh, I can't stand this person anymore. Like, oh, there's no spark. There's nothing between us. What do you think that causes? What causes that?
Should we take it a step back and say, like, is the marriage always going to be like a flames?
I guess. I mean, you could, but then my brain automatically goes like, if you're constantly looking for that feeling of, oh my gosh, we're on fire.
Yeah.
You're chasing a feeling.
For sure.
You're, like, we've said it here before and we'll say it again, like love is a choice. Like you're not always going to feel these butterflies. You're not always going to feel like excited to see this person that you married and oh my gosh, I can't wait until I get home and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's not going to always be that way. You shouldn't be chasing that feeling.
For sure. And I do think it's a fire, and sometimes it could be like whoosh, like exciting and like Benihana style, like when it goes up. But it shouldn't go out ever. It should be the steady, like fireplace, like just warming up the home, right? Mm-hmm. And so your question was, what makes it go out?
Yeah, what do you believe that makes it go out?
I think is, and I'm going to quote you, like what you focus on. Mm-hmm. I truly believe how we've been saying recently, and we're waiting on your journal.
It's getting close.
It's getting close. There's going to be things that annoy you 100%. Mm-hmm. That there's enemies around you, like things you can pick at to throw a dagger to, like, oh, look, there's fighting going on, or look, like something is out of place. 100% there always is. Mm-hmm. So I think one of the things is when women or men always choose to focus on their downfalls. You see the laundry basket there and you don't pick it up. If they focus on that over and over again, it's going to be a bigger issue than it ever is. Mm-hmm. You always say this, and like, it annoys me. And like, you always like, whatever, like, stop saying this, stop. And they just never, it'll be a bigger issue than you mean it to. You never help me with taking out the trash. I always have to remind you, whatever, any of those little things, like in the grand scheme of life, it's so small, it doesn't matter. But when you focus on it and you make it way bigger, like the enemies around you are like way bigger than they need to be, it's because you kept feeding it. And so I think that's one easy way to like turn off the flame, because you're just feeding this other thing that's honestly not that big of a deal.
Okay, so your perspective that you just gave right now is from a personal perspective, saying that I am personally responsible for part of it, right? You're saying what I focus on. It's what I focus on. Because if I can, like, I don't focus on you leaving a mess Monday through Friday, just for my sanity. I never leave a mess, so. David, your closet's never closed. And I always tell you, like, can you just put... That's like the one thing. Can you just put your clothes... If we were to take this camera and walk around and be like, this is David's mess and this is Grace's mess... Doesn't matter. Guess I'm not talking about me right now. Most mess. And so... or the toilet seat up. You never put it down. Like, and that would drive women crazy. And I just choose to be like... He just does it. Like, I like it down. I'm not going to think like, and there are women who I hear where like, if he cared about me, he would, like, they make it personal. And they blow it up. It's not that serious. Like, just overstate. It's not that serious. Like, I feel like I could get mad at you every day if I wanted to, every hour if I wanted to, because other people, like, they complain about the same thing. And it's just like, it's not that serious. And so I have to, like, it's like how they always say, choose your battles. Like, what is big enough to worry about? But it's very, very small. Like, there's not much. I think there is a saying, I forgot their names. I want to give them credit, but I forgot their names. But they're from Biola, and they did that conference. And it's like so heartful. Like, I was going to cry after it, because she was saying how her husband was
diagnosed with cancer, and how before she always hated that every time she went into the kitchen, she could tell exactly what he did, because the cupboards were always open, the forks and knives were always out. So she's like, I know exactly what he got. And that when he got diagnosed with cancer and he was in the hospital for quite a while, she would go home and be like, I wish I saw the cabinets open. Like, if I just saw them, like everything would be okay. Like she would have known that he's home and he's safe.
Yeah.
And when she first said that, I like was crying. And she said, so there's certain things where it's like small things, overlook it. What would happen if they got diagnosed today? Like, would you really bring it up? Like, it's not that big of a deal. And then if it's maybe like financial issues or something like that, like talk it out. That's things where it's like, okay, you can't overlook it because it's going to affect maybe our kids, maybe our future.
Yeah.
Like that's not something, that's when you talk it out. But then there's big things, like maybe a porn addiction or affair where you're like, okay, that's therapy.
Yeah.
And so she's like, you have to have those 3 categories and always ask yourself before you blow it out of proportion, is this a overlook it, talk it out, or go to therapist? Like what category is this? Because some women, you would think the way they talk, like it would be like therapist for like leaving the toilet seat up. And it's not that serious. So that's one for me. I think that can easily take out the flame.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And that little story that you told like really changes perspective for sure. Because yeah, like I kind of put myself in that lady's shoes, and yeah, like 100%.
Yeah.
You could miss all those cupboards. One day you were annoyed at it. Another day you were missing seeing them open. That's crazy.
How about for you?
So first, I do like your perspective in regards to take responsibility. Keep your heart in check, make sure like you're focusing on things that are actually important, and, you know, kind of let go of the things that aren't that important. I will talk about the other side of that coin, which, you know, because I've already brought it up with the trust, what helped us, because before couples therapy, I would say, yeah, like we didn't have much of a spark, you know, like, I feel like we could really easily get on each other's nerves. And I mean, we've told the story here before when you gave me the $8.99 or $8.99 like digital divorce papers. You were done with me. You wanted nothing to do with me. And I've had the moments where I'm like, oh my goodness, like complete honesty and vulnerability. Like, I was just like, if I never saw her again, I'd be fine.
But I'm sure I want to know, like, because I feel like if you're married, you've had that thought. Like, you've thought, like, would life be better without them?
Yeah.
Like that's just real.
I think it's normal. Yeah. But there's times where you're just like, you're just like, oh my goodness. Like, well, do I have to go through this frustration?
Yeah.
Do I have to go through this annoyance? Like, life would be so much easier. And like, that's where that saying comes out of, like, the grass is always greener on the other side.
Yeah.
Because you hop on the other side and let's say you like divorce and you're single, then you're all lonely and you're like, man, I wish I had somebody.
Or well, you get someone and you have to start from square one and go through that annoyance phase again. And
exactly. And you don't know what they're like and, you know, all this stuff. But what my perspective would be on the other side is, so you've said, you know, take responsibility. That's personal. Like, you personally take responsibility. On the other side is the communication and the trust. And one thing that me and you came to the conclusion of after couples therapy is you want to be seen. I want to be seen. You guys want to be seen. Everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be heard. And everybody wants to be understood. And when those 3 things happen, the embers are there. You got heat going on.
Ooh.
And that's what happened with us. Like, when we started like vulnerably opening up with a mediator there, you would have your like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, I understand. I accept. I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. We got to look out for each other. And that's where I feel like there was a a great bond made through couples therapy. And it was, I have your back. I have your back. Obviously, at the beginning, it wasn't perfect. Like, I remember we used to keep calling each other out in love, but we kept calling each other out like, no, 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 no. Like, don't be doing that.
Yeah.
But the trust was being built. And that's, for me, what meant so much to me was I can trust this person that when I speak, I will be heard. I will be listened to, and I will be understood. That means the world to anybody. And that's what I feel like fizzles out a fire a lot of times, because you're saying like, yeah, in part it's personal. Like, what are you focusing on? Oh my gosh, she doesn't put the toilet. Is that the worst of your problems? Because if that is, homegirl, you got it good. Mm-hmm. And for the guy, if he's like, I don't know, like whatever his complaint, it could be something tiny. Maybe she doesn't put the plates that I want, like, or doesn't cook the right food that I want, like things that are not that big. It's just like, if that's the worst of your problems,
She
buddy,
nags at me.
You got it good. She nags at me. That's a communication issue, honestly. Yeah, that's just popular. Like, learn how to communicate. But like you said, if there's an addiction going on that's affecting the marriage and the kids, okay, that's something we got to talk about. Mm-hmm. You know, if there's money issues, if we need to get on the same page of financial goals, how we're going to move forward, how we're going to raise these kids, these things that, again, come with good communication. This is my point of view. This is my point of view. Why is it my point of view? This is where I'm coming from. This is where I'm coming from. Yeah. Understanding, okay, I'm going to take a time to listen. There's a good skill. I don't know if we've talked about it here. It's called the speaker listener. I will tell you, it's one of the hardest things that you can do. It is one of the hardest things that you could do, because today's society does not listen. We suck at listening. We react and we do not respond. A reaction in a conversation is, I'm not even going to let you finish, because whatever it is that you said at the beginning of your sentence triggered me, and I'm going to pop, get you back. Where a response is, I will shut my mouth until you finish.
Yeah.
That speaker listener, shut my mouth until you finish. Once you're finished, then what's my job is to repeat back what you said to me, and then ask you, is that what you said? And if you say yes, that means I understood you. If you say no, guess what I have to do? I have to try again. And the whole point of that practice is, did you understand what I said? And when you just repeating back what somebody said to you gives them a level of, you heard me, you accepted what I said, and you understood it. And then you can respond, and it goes back and forth until you get, But a lot of the problems is that we don't listen, we react, we don't let the other person finish. And so how does the person feel when you cut them off? They feel annoyed, they feel frustrated, but deeper down than that, it's, I am not valued. What I have to say is not valued. What I have coming out of my mouth, but really coming from my heart, is not being heard or understood or accepted. And so you just feel like less appreciated. You feel less than. You don't feel valued. You don't feel validated. Like all these things start coming up, and that starts to become a big issue. And that's when a person can start focusing on this person, and the contempt comes in. And the contempt, we've already said, like, it's one of the 4 horsemen, right? Something like that. But contempt is like the biggest one, because then after me feeling like you didn't let me talk, guess what? She never lets me talk. Contempt. She never listens to me. Contempt. She doesn't care about me. Contempt. She doesn't care about my heart. Contempt. Like, all these things start rising up, and this giant enemy starts to rise up. And guess what you're focusing on? You are no longer focusing on that table that is in front of you, which is the blessing of your marriage. You are now focusing on all the negative that is trying to bring down your marriage.
Yeah. And that's easily another flame quencher.
Oh yeah, 100%. You have that moment of, he didn't even let me speak. She didn't even let me speak, over and over again. You're dumping a whole bucket of water on that fire.
And so you said that's one of the quenchers that you can think of. But one of the ways to fan it is to make yourself, I guess, like, make yourself understood of, I understand you, right? Make yourself like available to listen, truly just communicate well. That's a fire starter.
Yeah, the first thing, as we were speaking, I hope that you guys are reflecting, those of you that are already in a marriage or a relationship, whatever. If you're like, oh dang, like I'm getting a little triggered right now because I'm usually the one that cuts off my better half. Like, start reflecting on that.
Yeah.
And ask yourself, do I want to continue this way? Because if you want to continue this way, you're going to continue alone not so long from now.
Or miserable.
Miserable.
The marriage, yeah.
But if you're listening to this and you're triggered and you're like, that's me, then start challenging yourself to like, okay, when he or she speaks, I'm going to let him finish. As much as it's my habit to just take out the bazooka, take out the guns, take out the Glocks, just pop, 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 spray and pray. Like, you got to stop yourself.
Yeah.
Because I think everyone deserves to be heard. Everybody deserves to be understood. And if you really want your relationship to work, you're going to practice that.
For sure. And that's something, and this isn't about parenting, but that comes super handy when your kids start feeling big emotions and all they want to do is be understood. But I would say, stereotypically, at least what I've seen, women are usually the interrupters. But I think one of the things I usually see in men that could easily be a fire quencher is when men just are listening to us, and they're just being passive. And we want a reaction, and we're not getting one. So then we'll just take it up a notch, right? And I think that's another skill. Like, maybe you don't know what to say, right? Because usually men are just like, okay, I don't know. But just repeating them. Like, you don't even have to say anything new. Just listening to them and repeating it, and be like, is that kind of just puts their walls down. Like, he's hearing me. Because I feel like a lot of men get overwhelmed when we just like start talking at them, and they just are passive, saying like, I don't want to start the fight, right? I don't want to make this bigger than it is. But that passivity gets us going and going.
And it's a two-way street. And it goes back to the responsibility of communicating and responding. So who's like, usually when a woman is already worked up, there's a certain like level, there's a certain tone that women tend to use where men usually tend to immediately just shut down. And it's just like, all right, I'm just going to shut my mouth because it's obviously better than interrupting you. I'm going to shut my mouth. I'm going to let you say whatever it is that you want to say. I'm going to acknowledge that I'm hearing you. So, okay, yep, yeah. And we are just trying to get through this as fast as possible to suffer the least amount of time.
It makes it worse.
It makes it worse. But then we go back to the woman that's communicating. If women already know that this is probably what's going to happen.
And men know that
it goes back to practicing insanity is practicing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
I agree.
You need to try something new to be able to get a new result.
So the man can try something new.
Pardon?
The man can. It could be anyone. You're making it seem like it could be only the women.
No. Both ways.
Yeah.
Both ways. And that's why I said, I go back to that story of who's responsible, the one communicating or the one listening.
For sure.
It's both. Like, it's her responsibility to learn how to communicate well to a man, and also a man's responsibility to be able to respond properly to a woman, to both kind of diffuse each other.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. Maybe the man's the one trying to communicate to the woman. He's got to learn how to communicate to her.
For sure. And so, though we've stated a couple of fire quenchers, the trust, we've said, and communication are big fire starters, or at least is the foundation of like the gas, right? Of like, you need this in order to keep it going. would you say the others, because I think trust and communication is such a big thing, that would you say the other minor things are important? Like you said, oh, dating and vacations. Any other tips you have?
Well, I think it all comes down to hearing out your partner, right? So, I mean, in general terms, you always hear, you know, women want to be dated, they want to be wooed, they want to be conquered, they want to, all these things, right? But I, as a man, coming from a man, go, what does that actually look like? Because we've had this conversation on this podcast before where you're like, conquering is this to me. And I'm like, conquering's this to me. And so you're like, then you're not a conqueror. And I'm like, well, that's like crazy to me.
I remember that podcast.
Yeah, that like, no man likes to hear that, you know? So it definitely communicating the expectations.
That's a big one.
Some women don't like to communicate the expectations. And this is where all those memes and all those videos on social media come up where a woman says one thing and the man does that and she goes, no, that's not what I wanted. And he goes, do you like, what am I, psychic?
But that's another fire quencher for sure, is you having expectations that weren't even talked about.
Yes.
And so it's in your head. And as soon as I think the man doesn't fulfill those expectations, that's a fire ender. But then for some reason, women still like have these expectations and it's just like fire quencher because they can never be met. But it's because they're never communicated. Or they don't know like their spouse and they just like, they want them to be someone different.
Listen, for all the men out there, clarify this for me. Why do women not want to be clear with their man?
It goes back to you should, like, we want to be known.
We want to be known.
Because
and so many times we ask, what is it that you want? And you guys go, I don't know.
True. I know what I want. Because we have in the past, like, oh, we want this. And maybe it happens like once and then it like goes away and it's like, you know, or we maybe pick a fight and like, okay, now they're going to do it. Like they know. And it's not. And it's just like, it's just over and over again. It's like, they are not listening. They are not hearing me. They do not care about me. So then they start taking it personal of like, they don't care about me. And some just kind of give up of like.
Wait, but you didn't answer the question. Why do women not want to be clear with their man?
No, they do. I feel like women, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think women just don't say nothing. I think they do. And then
if you look at all the videos online.
It must be right.
And you see all the comments are like, yep, we're on point.
No, I think they get tired of it. And men, sometimes I think it's like, they don't get a clue. And for example, this is one of our examples. I've told you a couple times, Monday through Friday, I make the kids breakfast, myself breakfast. I'd love if you'd make me breakfast on the weekend. And there was a season, I think it was like Sunday. Every Sunday you'd make me breakfast before you would go to church. I think you would went to church a little bit earlier than me, that's why. And I loved it. Like I used to it. I loved it. Then you just stopped. And I'm like, and then when I had the expectation and you didn't fulfill, I'd wake up. Like I'd wake up, hear you making breakfast for the kids. Like you're moving things in the kitchen. I'm like, I'm not going to get up until my breakfast comes. And I'm like in bed for an hour and I'm like, I'm hungry. I'm getting upset. I haven't had my coffee. I'm getting a headache. And then I'm just annoyed. And then I'm like, my breakfast? And then you're just like, dang, you woke up but I like, it made this scenario. I told this story in my head. But I feel like I tell you, right? And there's sometimes you do it and then you just stop out of nowhere again. So it's like, do you guys, and then we're known for being naggers on top of that. So it's like men want us to communicate, but then when we communicate, we're labeled naggers. They just nag me. So it's like we feel sometimes, I don't want to say it is, but we feel like we can never win.
And that's where the clarity and the expectation and the communication comes in, because there are scenarios, there are times, and this is me kind of proving to myself that I listen. There are times where you go, David, you're going to go out for a run you don't know what it's like when you go out for a run. You go out for a run, and then these kids wake up after you've left, and then they go, "Oh, give me breakfast. I'm hungry."
Yeah, they wake
And
me up.
so what I hear you say when you're saying that is, I wish that these kids would leave me alone long enough for me to sleep in a little bit. Okay. And so that's why I almost always make these kids breakfast, leave you alone, and I tell the kids, mommy is sleeping, leave her alone. Go watch your Adley on the couch. Go eat snacks after you've done your breakfast at the table. The other one is in his playroom. And I'm like, okay, she's going to wake up whenever she wants. And these kids hopefully are not going to bother her. I don't know if they do or don't. But the hope is that I've relieved them asking you for, and I always now make sure that the toilet is right next to the toilet. And I tell
a mini stepper for my daughter.
And I tell Araya the toilet is already in front of this toilet, so you don't have to bug mommy that you need help to go to the restroom.
That's sweet.
And then you still wake up, like I come back and you're mad. You're like, wow, you didn't make me breakfast, and I'm like, I thought I was being considerate.
Yeah, but I feel like there's sometimes you don't take a ride and you're just there, and I'm like,
listen. And then one day, I think you did tell me. You told me, I don't care if you wake me up early as long as you give me breakfast and coffee.
For sure. Yeah.
And I went, oh, okay. Well, I thought you wanted to like sleep in. And you told me, no, I don't care if you wake me up early as long as you give me breakfast and coffee. And so, okay, you were being more clear.
Yeah. But I can see where the miscommunication coming.
Well, it's not miscommunication. I'm trying to listen and be considerate.
Yeah, you're right. I think that's one example where, again, expectations can easily quench the fire because you're thinking one thing, and that's where just assumptions come in. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's another fire quencher, assuming, right? And not just asking, like clarifying questions. Like, what is it that you like? What is it that you want?
And that's I believe, very a hard topic to tackle in regards to assuming. Because you ladies have a lot of requests. You guys have a lot of feelings and desires. And us as men, the ones that really care are trying to listen, right? And so in this scenario, like I heard you and I'm like, okay, she wants to sleep in. She wants the kids not to bug her. All right, let me do these things. And you're like, that's not like when you wake up and you are annoyed, you're frustrated. You didn't make me breakfast. You didn't make me my coffee. I was waiting for it in bed.
I sound so bratty.
What you hear in between the lines is what you did was not good enough. And to a man, that is a fire. And that's not just fire. Like, you're defeating his fire. You're defeating his pride. You're defeating his feeling of, I want to try this again. And that's where we can go into the debate of, okay, I assumed based on what I heard that this is the right thing to do. And so the debate from a man can be, when does a consideration weigh more than what you actually wanted? When does my thoughtfulness weigh more than what you wanted without actually saying it?
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like it's sad for a lot of men, where women just lash out like, no, that's not what I want. It's just like, why don't you value what your man did? Why don't you value that he actually thought of you? He heard you. He cared about you enough to try something.
But that's where the trust comes in. Because if I didn't know that you genuinely loved me, it's so easy to jump to those conclusions. And it's so easy to go that drastic and not see the good, right? And like defeat, how you said, their manhood and their pride. But when I trust you, it's where I can get over the small stuff, or I can, one of the things I had to deal with in therapy was, he still loves me. Like, even though might not say it the way I would want you to say it, you might not do certain things the way I want you to do it, like, you still love me. But so many marriages are operating in that because they're hurt. And so any offense is a huge offense, no matter how, like, we might see it as, okay, it's not that big of a deal, right? Like, you don't give me breakfast and coffee, yeah, I'm annoyed, but I don't question that you care for me, because I see it in other ways. Like we've had those conversations and really had to dig deep for that. But if people don't do that work, then everything is this huge offense. I feel like they're wounded, right?
Yeah.
I feel like we've been talking so much about fire quenchers, though.
Okay, let's talk about fire starters. I think
Fire starters.
being able to find things that you can laugh about together. Like if a man, I mean, that's almost like a general rule, but if a man can make a woman laugh, that's a fire starter for sure.
You make me laugh?
I think so. I don't know.
Our TikTok humor is not the same, though.
Oh, way off.
That's
Way off.
night and day.
But going along with, the funny part, it's having fun together. And that I think that we do.
Sure.
And especially we don't even have to go out to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's times in the kitchen where, you're acting crazy, I'm acting crazy. Like we're throwing on like some Bad Bunny new like album and we're just like dancing and just the kids get into it. And it's just that to me is fun. And that to me is, I don't know. The only word I can think of is it's love. Like I love those moments.
And you have to be like confident in yourself and then have confidence at the person. Because to be silly, it's a type of vulnerability. Like I know I cannot act like that in the kitchen. I'm not going to act like that in front of my friends. I'm not going to act like that at church. Like that's only my siblings saw it growing up. And like my husband and my kids see that side of me.
Yeah, and I guess going back to the trusting just for a moment, I have this journal. It's got prompts in it. Another journal besides the one that we're creating. And one of the prompts was, "Who are you in public versus who are you in private?" And writing all that stuff down, I found out that I am myself in private, which for me, private means in my home. And what I realized through that is that you've allowed a safe space for me to be who I am. And that's something that has taken time to happen.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad that we're there because yes, I do look forward to coming home to you guys every single day because this is my safe space. This is where I can be me. This is where I can love you guys unconditionally and love you the way that I love you guys. And I know that you guys are going to receive it that way and that we all love each other, that we all can have fun together, that we can all be silly together, that we can all make memories together. Like that's beautiful to me. And that's a fire starter for me.
For sure. And these conversations are fire starters for you. Because after the podcast, I'm going with this.
Yeah.
And you can't make this a reel because of my students. I don't think my students watch the whole podcast, but they watch the little clips. Because these conversations, like we go to sleep not pretty late, but late for us. And he's just feeling on me. And I'm just like, but these conversations.
It's every Wednesday. And Gracious, I just see her roll her eyes just like,
I'm tired.
I'm
but I noticed, even when we had therapy though, it wasn't just Better Everyday Podcast. When we had therapy, that was your fire, like your heat. Like that was your fire starter.
Honestly, like we in therapy, we talked about like foreplay. And for me, I think that's like one of the best things of the best forms of foreplay for me. It's the talking, to having great conversation, for me sharing my emotions, my feelings to you, and you like listening and understanding, and giving me advice. That for me is just like, all right, like we got to seal the deal now because you started the engine.
Which I used to like. This might be TMI. I used to be kind of annoyed that David, like he didn't want angry sex. And I'd be like, why? Like you see in the movies, and I think it's just expectations, right? You see in the movies, they get mad at each other and they're just like throwing it and it seems passion. And you're like, oh, I want that Hollywood, like, oh, just. And I think the older I get, I'm like, it is so beautiful that you care about my heart, that you love me. And that's what making love is so much that like, no, you can't do that. And I think that gives me so much peace knowing like, okay, he can never do it with someone else because that would take a long time to develop that emotional intimacy. Like if it took us so long to develop that. But again, it's so beautiful knowing, okay, he's not just doing it just to be done with it, like just to feel the need. This goes like way deeper than that, which I feel like a lot of men are not really, or I don't know, like maybe it's just a cliche, but maybe men are like that, and then just Hollywood doesn't portray it. But it's beautiful to see, like, no, like you care about me and you want my heart. You just don't want me for my body.
Yeah.
Which, do you think more men are like that? They just lie to themselves?
It's hard because, well, both men and women are heavily influenced by society.
Yeah.
By Hollywood, like you said, social media. And right now it's just like, like the era of, the dating apps, and like so many people now, they say like they just meet to do the dirty and that's it. And then they walk away and it's just like they met online, never even saw each other, met in person and just like, all right, yeah, you're cute. All right, let's go. Like,
but it's sad because they will never feel fulfilled in the way they want to.
Yeah, that's the sad part. And I'm hoping that with time, the pendulum swings back to, just a normal relationship.
That's cool. And I think that I thought of a fire quencher and a fire starter. Fire quencher for sure is using social media, movies, books as like, this is what it should be. Easily.
Yes.
That comparison game. And on the other hand, something that can be a fire starter is like we've talked about journaling or gratitude, like what you're grateful for. You writing a list of what your spouse does that you like will make you appreciative and will be like, wow, he's a good man. Because most of the time we married them because they're good people. And I've noticed someone told me, and I think now it's like a cliche where it's like, if you're like, when I'm really mad at you, I pray about you. And I'm like, okay, like I can't stay mad for long. Like when I'm praying about you, because I'm praying for your good. I'm praying for your well-being. So I'm not going to be cursing you. And as soon as you start cursing someone or like, oh, I'm so mad, I just wish this, like that's where you go downhill and you just think of everything worse. But when you catch yourself and you start listing everything that's good and you become grateful and you pray about them, like that's a fire starter for sure.
Yeah.
And I'd say, I do think having fun, whether that's date night, and I know we are blessed that we have Titi Mello. Like she is awesome with our kids, but I know not a lot of people have that. And so being intentional with, if you can't, I know there was a couple times where we put the kids to bed, ordered food. It sounded like we like sneaking out, like they don't know we have pizza. And putting on a movie. Like for me, that was fun. And that's something I remember. And like carve out time. I would also say like we schedule our sex life. I feel like we have to. And we're at least I know like it's going to get done. Do I want it to be like this forever? No. But it's an important part of our marriage that we cannot stop doing.
Yeah.
And I feel like people, I mean, I don't want for health reasons or whatever, but if it's like more than a week, like there's people who go like, oh, I can go like a month. That's crazy. And it shouldn't be. Again, it's sometimes not the easiest, especially women. Like I feel you, we have a lot on our plate and we're busy. But that's also a priority. And I also think I'd say having friends, like having people around you that are married and we've talked about in our friendship episode, like married friends too, because I feel like they remind you of certain things. Like when they see that maybe we're not good, they'll like bring it up, like, hey, what's up with David? Or, or
what's up with Grace?
You can talk to him about me. And I think sometimes you need that. Like we're human. I can't be your go-to every single time.
Yeah.
And so I think that's super important. But I don't know if this is controversial. I think being each other's like priority, like first, and I can't imagine a marriage where we say that and we get married and we say we become one and then we're not one. In the sense of like, I don't tell you everything. Like that to me is wild. I feel like that's a fire like quencher. Like if I find out you knew something or whatever and I didn't know, I'm just like, who am I to you? Maybe I sound nosy. Do I sound nosy? But for me, it's just like, I will tell you everything. And even with my kids, like, I would hope that if Elijah tells you something, like, don't tell mom, I'm like, okay. And then you tell me, I'm like, okay, I won't tell Elijah. But like, I am first. It's not our kids. It's not our friends. And with finances, that's another one where I don't understand. Like, if everything is just like, this is mine and that's yours, like, I feel like that's friends. That's not lovers. That's not partners. That's not being one. But we could talk about that another time. I do think it's so easy. It's scary how easy it is to like start, not spiraling out of control, but like that slowly stop fanning the flames, and how fast it could just like, psh, and before you know it, you're like, what happened? Like, we were good.
Yeah, I think when a couple gets to that point, it's one person gave up and then the other person gave up.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, to sound cliche, marriage is work. And you got to choose to do that work every single day. And the moment that you choose not to do that work, well, I mean, you're kind of dooming your marriage. And you stack up all those times that your spouse didn't feel understood or heard, well, you're dooming the marriage. It takes work. It takes you're gonna go through highs and you're gonna go through lows. Obviously, during the highs, it seems so easy, but then the lows come, and whether you like it or not, the lows will come. That's just life, and that's something that I've had to accept. That life will life, and the dream and the desire is that when you hit those lows, they last a little less every single time, because you are a little wiser, you are a little more mature, and there's a little more love between you and your spouse. And when that happens and you hit the lows, you start identifying things and you start, oh, okay, let me just listen. Even though I don't want to, even though I'm frustrated, even though I'm annoyed, even though I want to maybe strangle this person, like, I'm going to listen. And it's not just for my sake. It's not just for her sake, but it's for our sake, for our family's sake, and for our future generation's sake.
Yeah. And as you were saying, it is work. I thought of I remember I first listened to this, I don't know, it was a podcast or where I listened to it. In our beginning stages of our marriage, and I kept saying it to you, and you would get super annoyed. I'm like, the man ever news every day. Do you remember that?
Oh.
But it's exactly what you said.
Yes, but you would like use it to like manipulate me.
I was toxic. It was like in the beginning of our marriage, but it was good advice. It was saying how in the Bible, right, God gave manna to the people, and he said you had to go every morning and you had to go collect it. Mm-hmm. You couldn't collect old manna, because as soon as they tried to store it for the next day, so like, oh, if I just get all of this tomorrow, I don't have to work, I'll be good. Mm-hmm. It would go bad.
Yep.
All of it would go bad. And he was saying the manna renews every day. And so I think a lot of men or women, like, it's like, oh, I did this huge romantic gesture, it's going to last me for a year. And then they go like not being romantic the rest of the time. And it's like, you have to, it's continuous love, continuous care, continuous cariño. Like, we hold on to this one grand thing, like, oh, I did this, I'm proud of myself. And then it's like, no, the manna renews every day. Like, put the work in every single day. You can't say, but I did this, but okay, it doesn't matter. Do it again. Or do something else.
Yeah.
But I did use it in a really not smart way back. But it's, the truth is still the truth.
Yeah, 100%.
And so I hope you saw, well, I'm proud, because in the beginning I was annoyed at you. And that quickly turned around. It's
what I do.
I decided to look at the positive. But hopefully you saw, like, we still have times where I get frustrated. I ratted myself out, and then he gave me the context. I sounded like a brat. I expect my breakfast and my coffee. And how life is gonna life. There are gonna be moments that we feel so in love. We feel like we're best friends. We feel like we're unstoppable. And then it might be later on that week where it's like, oh my goodness, And that's okay, but it's what do you choose to focus on? Make sure you have that foundation of trust and communication. You need a strong foundation so that when those moments hit, you can easily decide to focus on the good because you know them. If you don't have that trust and communication, you're not going to be able to, you're going to be like grasping around for air because you have nothing to cling to. No goodness, no moments of, I remember when they did that. It's like with God, right? When he tests us, we can cling on to who we know he is, but we need a strong foundation. And so for us, that was therapy. I don't know if we could have gotten that without a therapist. It probably would have taken a long, long time. And a therapist quickly helped us see like, oh my goodness, we have been doing, well, we knew we were doing it wrong, but quickly like just took us back to alignment. And so if it's money, like, I don't know what your reason might be, but marriage is your huge investment. It's day to day you see this person. Your kids are going to witness it. So I think it is an important investment. And there's so many things that we put more emphasis on. And we see like therapists, oh, it seems out of hand. But I highly recommend, if not a therapist, a friend you can trust, leaders, pastors, maybe family members. But again, that you both trust, because it has to be someone that both of you can want to listen to. But you need that foundation, and find those moments where you can be having fun, where you can be on adventures, where you can be silly. All those little things do add up where your flame will not turn off. That it's possible, it is possible. And we'll check back in when we're 20 years plus married. But I'm excited. I truly, every time I think about like adding another year, it's not one of dread, like, oh my gosh, it's been 10 years with him. Like I'm so excited because I know every year it's going to get better. But that's because we have a strong foundation and we both have a biblical perspective. So we keep ourselves in check. And so please let us know what else you'd like. We kind of tell ourselves out. So what else you'd like to know, whether it's marriage, parenting, ministry, whatever it is. We truly appreciate all of the feedback you give us, the questions, the likes, the comments, the shares. We see it all. David takes data of it all. Doesn't go unnoticed. And I can't believe it's been a whole year. That flew by.
Yep.
Here's to year number 2 on our way. One episode at a time.
Yes, sir.
Until next time. Bye.
Bye.